When I was a child, I wanted to be a painter, but I didn't know what that was, really. I like to draw. I didn't want to disappoint my parents, but it was clear that being an artist was out of the question. In fact, when I was in graduate school and received my degree, my mother said, "We're so happy you became a photographer." And I knew this was not really the truth. And I thought, this is a very strange thing for her to say. And so I looked in that way, like, what do you mean? And she said, "Oh, we were so afraid you might become an artist." So you can understand there's a natural apprehension on the part of parents. They want to protect their children. They want you to have a good, happy, safe life and not a career as an artist. When I was young, I saw some films, and I think film is what made me feel that the only responsible way to live is to live as an artist. I can remember saying this out loud to myself, seeing a film and saying, really, it's the only reasonable way to live, to be an artist. Seeing this show is like reliving your whole life. It's like there's a little mental thread, like from a spider, that goes to every picture. I know every one of these instances, these moments so well. And then I live with those moments because you must make the picture. You only saw for just an instant. And then now you must study it and decide if it's successful, if it has this power. And so being in this show is such an honor and such a strong feeling of being all of the 72 years that I have lived are all present in this one room. I know you could organize the show many ways, but I actually like this way, and when I present my own work, I present it chronologically, or almost chronologically. Sometimes I put the end in the beginning and the beginning at the end, but that's really very simple still. You can understand it's a chronological order. And I believe in doing this because it's how I experience life. And so it's like a novel. It has a first chapter and a second chapter. It just makes so much sense to me. The first camera I used belonged to my father, and that couldn't last. So I got a job and bought my first Leica. And having a Leica was like joining a club with Cartier-Bresson and Robert Frank and Robert Doisneau. It was an international club of image making. And that lasted about the period that I was in school, about 3 years. And I had this experience one morning of very quickly making 3 or 4 pictures that easily could have been made by Robert Frank. And it came almost like a cold chill over me that I could be 60 years old and still be making Robert Frank pictures, or I could give this up and search to find a way of my own voice. And pretty much that day I decided, okay, that is the end of the Cartier-Bresson Robert Frank era, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And so when you speak of experimentation, one of the first things that a person living just the next house in Richmond worked for a newspaper, was a journalist, and he had access to a view camera, a large old Graflex camera. And he said, "Would you like to try?" And I was very excited. And almost at the same moment, the school purchased some military surplus cameras, and one was a large 8x10. I didn't even have film for this camera, and so I made pictures on sheets of photographic paper. And then I used those papers to print. So I was not really experimenting, I was just doing what was possible. Here was a camera, I want to see how it works. So I used paper instead of film. And I knew I would like that because it's very primitive, you're very slow, you're very helpless. You wait for the subject, and if they're not patient with you, you don't get anything. And then you set up and you explain how many seconds it's going to be. It could be 10 seconds. And they have to wait. And I loved that. It seemed to me like the most historically truthful system of photography. So right away, as a graduate student, I asked, can I use a 4x5 camera? I couldn't afford to buy one, but the school had that they could let you use. And that was a breakthrough. Right away, I made an important picture. Really, the first week I had of 4x5, I could see a new subject, and this is where the family came in to the subject, because with the family you could be slow. What you failed today you could redo again tomorrow. And the children would actually say, can we be in the picture today? Or if they ask you, was that good yesterday? If it wasn't good, let's do it again today. They love to be the performer, to be included in the activity. The children are so real to me, but I would say I could remember my own childhood so well. I was 19, 20 years old when I picked up a camera really seriously. And I had such a good memory of being a child and so much identification with the freedom of childhood. And I probably could foresee that adulthood would be a dilemma. It would bring you problems, responsibilities. You would lose a kind of primal freedom that you have as a child. And I think I just love that in children. Edith has 3 sisters, and the older of her 2 sisters both had children just at the time I was picking up the camera in a serious way. We weren't married and we didn't have children, but their children were just there. And it was just unbelievably simple and natural. And I wasn't explaining any idea to anyone. I wasn't trying to justify intellectually what I was doing. There had no audience for photography at that time. And even my teachers would look at the pictures and say, that's very nice, and just keep going. They really just left me alone. So I didn't have a good reason for what I was doing. It was just my feelings carrying me. I met Edith before I was interested in photography. And we became serious about 1960-61. And in that year, I went to art school. And it was going back to art school that led me back to photography. We didn't marry until I was almost finished with school. Really, the reason was nothing but financial. If I marry, my parents say that's it. And so until my last year of school, and then we married in the summer of '64. No, I have a close friend who we were in school together, and he was, in the '70s, he was the printer for Walker Evans, great American photographer who we both loved. And he said many times to me, he said he thought that I ordered my wife from Central Casting. I sent to Hollywood for just the right person. But it wasn't true. We met each other, we had no thoughts of our life, no particular ambition. And I just thought she was an amazingly alive person. And I I had known some girls, but no one ever left the impression that she did. And we've been together now 50 years, married, and 4 or 5 years beyond that, so a long time. And I haven't changed my opinion at all. The writer for the New York Times in a recent blog asked me a pretty nice question. He said, it makes a lot of sense, the nudity, the 70s, that era in your pictures. He says, but that doesn't explain why the pictures are still interesting, because we got over that. We're finished with that era. And I said, well, I won't try to explain it to you. And then he said back to me, he said, maybe because when we look in Edith's eyes, she stares back at us with almost animal intelligence, powerful intelligence. And I said, I couldn't think of a better answer. In less than 9 months, my 2 favorite uncles and the favorite great-grandmother died. And I was 22 years, and I was the oldest male in the family because it was a clan of only women. I had to change. And I think I was thinking about the lives that these people who were now dead, how they had made their lives in the world, and they were all agricultural in their orientation. And I thought, that's natural to me. I'm interested in that. I want to learn about that. And I think almost every change I've ever made was, I want to educate my own feelings. What will be my progress if I study this subject? And probably, I didn't think, well, I have to make photographs. I just have to study. And then very quickly I could see, well, it's natural. Photography is what I can do. So I just bring the two together. I study and I make the picture at the same time. And this is a really important point about photography. It's so incredible, the process of you being with the subject alone. And only you realize what you understood and saw. But the picture knows more than you know. And when you study the picture, you realize you didn't see but just a small percentage of what was really there. And so you're correcting your perception as you go. You think you know something. You think you made a certain kind of picture, and the picture says, no, I'm this. Something different. You didn't expect this. And then slowly you accept. And your perceptions just grow. It is really the life of a human being to educate your perception. And it grows in complexity. That's all. I'm still inside of me the same as when I was a child. But I'm more complex now. I can quote to you William Blake and Schopenhauer. I couldn't do that as a child. I actually received a commission from Washington State to make a series of pictures. And I thought I would continue agricultural pictures, and Mount St. Helens erupted. A month before the eruption, I had bought a new camera, like for the space program. And I knew it would be good for aerial pictures. And I was thinking, I would like to make some aerials, but I didn't know how. And with Mount St. Helens, it was the only way you could have access to the mountain was in the air. And, I went around for 6 weeks, really a whole summer, making pictures on the ground, always wishing I could be in the air. And eventually a chance appeared and I was able to fly. And I was to make so many pictures that summer. I'll say they wanted 10 pictures. In 3 hours over Mount St. Helens, I had made at least 20 pictures, so new, so completely unlike anything I had seen before. And I knew it was true because the pilot was working every day with scientists. And after the first half hour, we're just beginning, he's looking at me and he's watching me. He said, I don't know what you're doing, but I have to stop you and tell you, you're photographing the wrong thing. And I said, I don't know, but I am photographing all the things that no one else has shown me, which are beautiful to me. Now, if that's wrong, it's okay. And so many times in my life, someone would say, you're doing the wrong thing, and I would already know why it was a powerful thing to be doing. And I would just say, peace be with you. Think what you want to think. And I could just keep quiet. Really, I wouldn't say, peace be with you or anything. I'd say, fine. I can hear my little grandchildren saying that. You correct them for something and they say, fine. And they mean, I'm going to keep doing exactly as I want. I had a close friend at Princeton University who was a physicist and studied groundwater and wanted me to join him in studying nuclear problems. And I told him, no, it will make me too sad, I can't do it. And I helped him buy his own camera. I said, you must do this work yourself. It makes me sad. And while I was working these many years at Mount St. Helens, I realized that the reactors which produced the plutonium, which made the bomb which was dropped on Hiroshima, was made right there in Washington State. And I had been driving through this military reserve for several months and didn't understand what it was. So I said no at first, and then was some small failure or problem at Mount St. Helens. I couldn't go in the air. And I said, okay, I have a few days, let's go look at the nuclear reactors. And seeing them completely changed my idea. And I came home with a powerful feeling that the land, even though it has been destroyed, is still beautiful and still important. And I didn't know how you could show that, but I knew from that minute on that I had a new study. And probably because I had this idea, leaving Washington State that year, I saw what I thought was a missile silo being constructed. I was wrong, but it didn't matter. I had never stopped to think, what is a missile silo? How powerful is an atomic warhead? And why do we have more than 1,000 missiles? 4,000 warheads aimed at another part of the civilized world. And I had to start thinking all over again. I actually went to the university library and I looked for a book which was in the card index, the missile silos of North America. It was missing. About the same time, a young physicist had designed an atomic bomb that you could make in the garage. Homemade atomic bomb. He was hired by the Atomic Energy Commission, and his thesis was put away in a bank vault, secret. It was classified. And in this atmosphere, I realized, wow, this is a very serious question. And in a strange way, I thought there was a possibility that I could, well, I had been able to see Hanford, which was, it's off limits. But if you flew so high, you could go there. Not on the ground, but in the air. And I realized in making studies from the air, I was only getting ready to do this other work because I needed to learn how to make pictures from the air. And really, I think each unit of my life has been about a 10-year period. So maybe there are 5 periods. I've been photographing for 50 years. Because if I hadn't been working at an important university, I don't think they would have allowed me to see. We had 2 observers, one from the Department of Energy and one from the Air Force. And they said, these are all the things you cannot do. You cannot see, you cannot look, you have to always be looking down at the ground. And I said, am I the first human being that you have allowed to see this place? You know, all these rules. I didn't say human being. I said individual. And he said, you're not an individual. You are a university. And you can see what he meant. He was saying, take away the university and you're not here. If you're just an independent person, no way. And yet, when this man told me, send me some pictures and I'll help you identify what you have seen, which was an amazing help because there was nothing published. You couldn't find out these things. And when I sent the first 10 pictures for identification, I called one day to see if it was okay. And one of the secretaries answered the phone and she said, all the ladies in the office say, that's why you're a professor at the university. These are the best pictures that have ever been made of the test site. And then I talked to the official people and they said, would you like to have an exhibition? And I said, no, but I'd like to come back again. And the first time, it took 8 years. The second time, all I had to do was ask. And the third time, the same, and then I was done. Exactly 10 years, I had been studying what I thought of as nuclear problems. And with that was also agriculture on an industrial scale, which is extremely destructive and it can't be continued. It's not sustainable. But at the end of that 10 years, and I had the permission to photograph at the Nevada test site. And even just that one experience, I was so excited to go there and to have this permission and to photograph the site. I was thrilled in a way, and I was, full of animation. And yet, by the time I had flown back home and experienced Christmas and a little time to reflect, I was almost so sad I couldn't continue. And I went back to the Nevada test site for the Christmas next and the next for 3 years in a row, after which time I said, that's it, I don't want to learn anymore. I'm already sad enough. And in this interval, something that I had done when I was a child, I had collected plants as a child, and I'd saved snakes and kept things in little glass boxes. And I was very fond of insects. I couldn't tell you why. I just thought they were wonderful. You could sit and watch an insect for a long time and be taken into a new world. And we started going to the tropics. We went that year to Ecuador. And just the smell of the tropics, it was winter at home, and here, January the 1st, it was just hot and humid and beautiful. And it is amazing to me. If I was in Pennsylvania, I would be afraid of snakes. In the tropics, I didn't care. I wanted to see this insect, and so I am crawling on the ground. I'm going anywhere to find something. And I'm so happy there. And I knew I didn't have an idea of making pictures. I just wanted to see it. And again, it's like you educate yourself, by the experience of going to a new place and asking questions and letting people help you become educated. When I showed this interest in nature, it was really interesting. Many people at the university took an interest in me in a different way. They said, oh, we want to help, or we send you, or we call somebody, we tell somebody to help you out. For 15 years now, I've been studying insects in the tropics. Really, I'm studying the tropics. I'm studying environmental biology. And I pick moths because nobody likes them or studies them very much. And they're at night, and I like that. And they come out of the dark, and you never see before. And even a little thing like one of the places where, in the Smithsonian in Panama, where I was allowed to work, the walls were painted this beautiful human green and blue. And I thought, when the little moth comes and sits on this green wall, it's like a little angel coming to visit human beings out of the forest, out of the deep, out of the invisible world. Teaching was a wonderful experience for me. And it came because Harry Callahan, who was my teacher, said, if you're going to be a photographer, you have to teach, because it's not possible to do good pictures and not teach. If you be a journalist, if you do fashion, if you do promotional photography, then you must work for other people. It cannot be your own original work. The only choice is to teach. So the first day that we met, he said, I want you to help me teach my class. And after a semester, he said, now I want you to teach it by yourself. And the next year, I taught a class by myself. And I'm sure that the position that I found, my first teaching position, which I found that first summer, I would not have achieved that position if Callahan had not been the person saying, this is a good person, you should hire this person. So he was leading me on in this direction. He's saying, that's what you should do. It's the way you can preserve your autonomous originality. Really, you don't have a choice. And I found right away that it was natural to me. My father was a Methodist minister, so he was a kind of teacher. I didn't want to be the same kind of teacher, but my mother was a music teacher. I wanted to be just like my mother. It's okay to say message. My father dealt in messages. A minister gives a message and he wants results. And I think I just naturally, watching my father's frustration, I said, forget the results. But the message is a simple one. It's what you do every day. All the simple things that you care about, that is what matters. Quality of attention span. We talk now about children who misbehave, who are bad children, and they say they have short attention span, but they don't have short attention span when they care about something. If they're playing video games, they have a fabulous attention span. And so you say quality of attention span and use it for what is important to you, for opening yourself, for accepting what you don't understand, instead of saying no, instead of saying, I want to negate what I don't like. You say, I want to accept what I didn't understand. To be more at peace with yourself.
Thank you. This was
Clip.